Thanks for tuning in. I'm Steve Raye, author of How to Get U.S. Market Ready. And in this podcast, I'm going to share with you some of the lessons I've learned from 30 years in the wine and spirits business, helping brands enter and grow in the U.S. market. I've heard it said that experience is what you get when you don't get what you want. My goal with the book and this podcast is to share my experience and the lessons learned from it with you so you can apply those lessons and be successful in America. So, let's get into it. Margin versus markup. Ever wonder what the difference is? It's really that they're two sides of the same coin. In my work with both export and domestic wine and spirit brands, I commonly find that clients are confused by the difference between the two. But of course, understanding this difference is absolutely crucial to managing business, and particularly important in the case of the U.S. three-tier system, where a price structure continually marks things up. So if you get it wrong in the beginning, it gets compounded when you get to the end. The simple way to think about this is there are three primary terms that you're going to be playing with and just doing some very simple changes in formula to get to your answers. And the three are as follows. 1, revenue, also called gross revenue or sales. And that's the income generated by selling a product or service, how much money you receive for selling it. The second is cost of goods sold, often called COGS or pronounced COGS. Cost of goods sold includes the expenses that go into making a product and or providing a service. So in the case of a product, it's all the raw materials for liquid label, bottle closure, reshipper, and so forth. And in the case of providing a service, the primary piece is labor. And then the third is gross profit, and that's the revenue remaining after paying the expenses of making the products and or providing a service. Pretty simple. Revenue, cost of goods sold, gross profit. So to calculate margin, also called gross margin, shows the revenue made after paying the cost of goods. To calculate the margin, you start with your gross profit, which is revenue minus cost of goods, and then you find the percentage of the revenue that is gross profit. Let's use a simple example. Let's say that you sell a 9-liter case for $200. You've calculated your COGS, cost of goods sold, to produce that case to be $150. So first we're going to find your gross profit, which is the difference between the revenue, $200, and the cost, $150. So gross profit equals $200 minus $150, or $50. To find the margin, this is where the formula comes in. We're going to divide gross profit by revenue. Let me repeat that. To find the margin, not markup, to find the margin, divide gross profit by the revenue. So the gross profit in this case was $50. The total revenue was $200. So $50 divided by $200 equals 0.25. That's your margin. And if you want to express it as a percent, you just multiply that number, 0.25, times 100, and that gives you 25%. So in this case, the margin is 25%, and the simple meaning behind it is you get to keep 25% of your total revenue. You spent the other 75% on cost of goods. Markups are different than margins. A markup shows how much more your selling price is than the amount the item costs you. Like a margin, you start with your gross profit, which is revenue minus cost of goods sold, and then you find the percentage of the cost of goods sold that is gross profit. So we're working on markup here again, right? Using the example that we've had above, if you sell each case for $200, the product costs you $150 to make, COGS, cost of goods sold. So first, to find the gross profit, we take total revenue, $200, minus $150 equals $50 gross profit. And then if you wanted to write that as a percentage, we divide the gross profit by the cost of goods sold. So that's $50 divided by $150 equals 0.33. Multiply that by 100 is 33% markup. It's essentially the same amount of money. $50 is the same dollar value in this example for both margin and markup, but when spoken of or when referenced as a percent, a 33% markup equals a 25% margin. That's where it gets a little confusing for people. How can two different numbers mean the same thing? 25 and 33 equals 50? That doesn't make any sense, Steve. Well, yes, it does. If you look at the actual math, it will be very clear when you see it on a piece of paper. Pretty difficult for me to do that in a podcast. I'm just trying to show you the basic difference in how to think about them. I'd highly recommend, once again, that you buy the book. You can also find a tool when you go to www.getusmarketready.com and register your email address. Under Tools, you'll find a price structure calculator, and it has a simple table for you to look at to differentiate margin versus markup. So when we're thinking about margin versus markup, they interact in a very predictable way. Each markup relates to a specific margin. Markups are always higher than their corresponding margins. This is Steve Raye saying thanks again for listening on behalf of the Italian Wine Podcast. To ignore the facts does not change the facts.